Have you ever struggled with the mission that God has put you on? Lacking clarity, lacking seeing moving parts of what you believe God is doing, and then all of the external things that are happening in life are happening. Let's talk about today. Hey everyone, welcome to Mission and Likeness. My name is Scott. Thankful that you are joining us, whether you're watching on YouTube or on loveLocalPA.com, or you're listening on Apple, Google, or Spotify. Thankful that you are taking the time to check out this episode. I hope that God works through it in a way that helps you to clarify and see how He is moving. Later on in the show, I want to be talking about some of the more specific things that I'm struggling with, and not like my whole world is falling apart, but I feel like there is a very clear mission that is before me, and there are just things that I'm not seeing, and we'll get into it later on. First, I want to talk about local memberships. We just launched local memberships, and simply what that means is it's a subscription to loveLocal. So let me paint a pretty big picture here. So if you bear with me for just a few moments, loveLocal is, our desire is for it to be a network, a place, a community where followers of Jesus, or Christians, or even those who are seeking, those that God is working in their hearts, and they have questions, and they want to get some ideas of what it means to follow Jesus, because a lot of times the theology and everything clicks first, and then we have no idea how that actually works. You know, someone could say, you know, if you believe in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, you repent of your sins and you turn and follow Him, you are saved. That's the gospel in a nutshell. But the hard part is, okay, so how does that actually change my life? How does that change the circumstances that I'm in? How does that change my job situation, my relationship situation, my financial situation? Does that change my situations that I'm in? And so I want loveLocal to be a place where we answer those questions, where we model that lifestyle, that people are coming together and showing what it looks like to follow Jesus. And I want to do that not just in podcasts, but I want to do that in film and in comedy and in entertainment, and not just for adults, but for kids too. You know, as I see the content that my kids are watching becoming more and more, how do I even explain it? If you're a parent, or if you have siblings, or you're younger, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, the over-sexualization of things, the language that's being used, how they're framing life, it is just becoming more and more detrimental to how the Bible actually shows us to live, and how we're to think about things, and how we are to go about our lives. And I think without going down a rabbit trail, it's genius on their part to want to get this kind of content in front of kids at a young age, because they're super impressionable. And so you could make the argument, I guess, oh, well, you're trying to do the same thing. And I would argue, yes, that is part of our goal. We do want to get gospel truths in front of kids as early as possible, so that they can grow up knowing these things, these truths about God that are going to have eternal effects, not just worldly effects. So that sounds all great and awesome. But right now we're a podcast and a couple of offshoots, and we're trying to build. I'm trying to build out additional content that is not just entertaining, but is theologically sound, that is gospel rooted, that is across all platforms, for all ages, and that's a lot of work. And so we've launched local partnerships because we believe that we can do this and we need some help. And we firmly believe that people want to put their money behind things that they believe in. And that's why so many people have been canceling Netflix. They've been canceling Disney Plus because they don't represent the values. And there are other networks out there. I'm not saying that there's no quality Christian content out there, but we believe the more voices, the better. And so local memberships, $7 a month is what we have them priced at right now. And all of the money coming in through local memberships is going to be reinvested back into the company, back into content, bringing external individuals in to help work on new content. That's what we're working towards right now. And so if you're already a local, thank you. We truly appreciate it. And if you are thinking about it, pray about it, think about if this is what you want to give, some of your money towards. We understand, the craziness of our world right now, but we would truly appreciate it. And if you have no idea that we even offer local memberships, here's my invitation to you. Head over to loveLocalPA.com/join, and you can sign up for a monthly membership, or you can sign up and do an annual membership as well. And like I said, we're at this point, we're a podcast with a couple of different offshoots, but when you become a local, you're first and foremost supporting our mission. You're supporting what we are trying to build. And I'm not a believer in taking on a whole bunch of debt, or any debt for that matter, in order to, build. And I understand that is very countercultural, and that you're going to have to, just trust that this is what we're working towards. But it is. It's something that I would actually love for this to be what I do full time, to dedicate my work and my time towards building this network. So if it's something that you are able to do, loveLocalPA.com/join. You can sign up $7 a month. Or if you want to do an annual plan, you can actually save. You can get 2 months free by entering the promo code LOCAL at checkout. So that's loveLocalPA.com/join. And again, we would truly appreciate if you're able to help us out. Now, one of the things that we want to address, not just, in some of our podcasts and stuff like that, but what kind of ties into this episode specifically is just what is going on in this world. I mean, each and every day, it seems like we are getting more and more craziness happening. And, let's just be blunt. Gas where we are right now is $5 a gallon. And I know closer into Pittsburgh, it's over $5 a gallon. I know out west and up in the Northeast, it's way more than $5 a gallon. And so I understand that it's all relative to where you live. Food prices have gone up a lot. Crime is going up in a lot of places. There are tons of jobs available. Like everywhere around us is hiring. And they've been hiring for months, but they can't seem to hire anyone. But at the same time, the economy seems to be just like grinding to a halt. And we're not sure, like, is a recession coming? What does that mean? How can we prepare for that? Is there a fix? Is the government a fix? And as a business owner, I'm thinking through all of these things. So what does a recession mean? Is that something where communication becomes even more important for companies? Is that something where they're going to cut? And it's kind of up in the air. But as I'm thinking through it, I'm just thinking to myself, where am I placing my hope, my trust, and my motivation? And I don't want to oversimplify this and just say, if you just have faith, you're going to be fine. Because many faithful people are concerned about what is going on in our world. And it's super easy and somewhat cliche to say, I'll just have faith in God. But our faith is a movement. It's an action. And it's rooted in what we do. And so I don't want to confuse, being saved and coming to faith in Jesus with our ongoing faith that we live out each and every day. But I want to explore a little bit today what it is that we're trying to reorient our lives around. I mean, what does it look like when the world is going crazy for us to live faithfully? And I think for a lot of us, and myself included for a long time, it was, we need to retract, we need to internalize, we need to look with, we need to get everything in and bring it into our box to protect, with 2 kids, with, family, we just tried, and with friends, we're trying to watch out for them. And we immediately go into like this, we need to bring everything in and make sure everyone's accounted for and move in that direction. And I actually think that might not be true. And so, again, hear me out. I think we see throughout Scripture, when Jesus was crucified, that's what his disciples did. They hid. They went into a room and they locked themselves in there, and they only went out for, the necessary things, and that's what they did. And then we see throughout the book of Acts, they went out and they preached the gospel. They lived out the gospel. They lived with the hope and motivation of everything else could fall apart. Everything else could collapse. Our lives could be taken from us. But we're going to serve Jesus, and we're going to love others. And we're going to make our mission in life to share the gospel and live in the likeness of Christ. And when I think about the church in, Afghanistan and in other parts of Asia and the Middle East and in Africa, where there is persecution happening and people are meeting in secret in order to hear the good news of God and to encourage and build each other up, I think about where we are. And I just think to myself, what is my hope in? Is it in the economy? Is it in lower food prices? Now, I'm not saying that those are, obviously I want to pay as little as possible for my food. I don't want a $200 a month electric bill. I want my air conditioning to work again. I want these things. But if that's where I'm putting my hope, man, am I just stripping glory away from who God is? Like, if I can only be comfortable in doing the mission that God has put me on, as long as food prices are inexpensive and inflation is under control and the economy is strong, I don't see that anywhere in Acts. I don't see that anywhere in the Bible. Again, I don't want to oversimplify, because I understand that these are true issues. I understand that it is difficult for people to put food on the table right now. And so I don't want to be insensitive to that. But where I think we come together and where the hope of Christ unites us is where we can actually see the needs of our brothers and sisters in our community and come together and meet those needs. Where we can say, I know this family is struggling and we have some extra, so we're going to invite them over for dinner and we're going to make sure that they have a solid meal. We're going to help this family that we know is going through this, and maybe we can't help everyone. But with some intentionality and with actually being in community with people, we can find out where we can help serve them, where we can love them, where we can act as a gospel force for those in our life. We'll be right back here on Mission and Likeness. Hey, are you a content creator that has a desire or are already creating gospel-centered content like podcasts, music, film, or blog posts? If you are, we would love to collaborate with you here at loveLocal. If that's something that interests you, head over to lovelocalpa.com/partner and fill out our creative partner form, and then we can reach out to you and hopefully get a new project started. So what are some of the things that you are maybe putting as your hope and your motivation? Think about it, pray about it. How does the gospel speak to that? And how can you reorient and repent of that and find true hope in Jesus? All right, welcome back to Mission and Likeness. All right. So the challenge here is the mission of following Jesus, of loving God and loving others, as all of the commandments are wrapped up in those two things. How do we do that? In theory, it's not hard. If you really think about it, life is not difficult. I was preparing a speech I was going to give earlier this week, and I was looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the first thing that we look for is food and safety, like protection. We want to make sure that we get through the day. And in order to do that, we need just to know that we're safe. And then we branch out, and then we, need shelter and clothing, and then we need, our needs go up until eventually we get to a point where, we try to better ourselves intellectually and culturally, and we are creative in what we do. And if you think about it, like if you break life down, we really need food and water. And if you look at and shelter would be, desirable. And if you look at where we spend our money, we spend a lot of money on food right now. We spend a lot of money on shelter right now. And it seems like a lot of the peripheral things. So once we get those taken care of, then we can move on to other things. But it seems like the way that the world is structured right now, and understanding that sin is just corrupting everything. It is just everywhere, and getting into the nitty gritty of even, what kind of shelter we buy, what kind of food we buy. Do we buy the name brand? Do we buy the off brand? There's even conflict in that. But what I was saying before the break was, if we're actually in community with each other, we can understand where people are in that, and there's always ebbs and flows to all of this. And so there's going to be times where we are in a place where we need help, and there's going to be times where we are in a place where we can give help. And maybe it's not a physical need, maybe it's an emotional or intellectual need that we can help people out with. But the big issue in all of this, as we strive to live out the mission of sharing the gospel with people, loving people, honoring God in everything that we do, the issue is some people don't want to share. They don't want others to see that they have a need. There is a pride. There is a embarrassment that we're falling on hard times, or, whether it's a job loss, or, there's so many different variables that we could explore, but there is a pride. And I think in a way, we've allowed this trying to keep up with people as our benchmark. It's no longer just meeting our needs. We've now gotten into exceeding our needs. And I don't know. I mean, I look around and we really don't need a whole lot, but we want so much. We want the 300 channel, cable package, or we want to have Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and AT&T Stream. We want all of that. We need a basic vehicle to get around here and there, but we want the latest and greatest with the heated and cooled seats and steering wheel and panoramic sunroof, or, we want the Tesla, we want the big car, we want the big house, we want the house in this neighborhood, and we want the house on this street, and we want all of these things because we're putting our hope and we're putting our motivation and our joy in material things. And that can actually work in the flip. And we could say, well, I'm purposely going to drive a jalopy, and I'm purposely going to live in this house because look at me and look how I am able to live within my means, and look at how it's all rooted in pride. We either want what we can't have, or we're so proud that we have lived such a good and responsible life. And in reality, our goal is to be humble and to be satisfied, not in an arrogant way. Because whether you live in, the neighborhood with the car and all of that, or you don't, none of that has anything to do with salvation. Salvation is like, it completely supersedes all of those material things. And I think as we get into deeper and deeper, I just finished watching Stranger Things season 4, and I'll admit it was difficult to get through a lot of the language and everything, and I struggled watching it at times because it's just so unnecessary. What is going on, and it really doesn't help the story along in any ways. It's just in there because they can, essentially. And I'd love to be able to produce something of a Stranger Things theme that wasn't just, anyways. So I was watching Stranger Things, and it just, I forget where I was even going with that. But the hope and motivation that we have is, it's not about what we have. Oh, I was saying, things are becoming darker, it seems. Like season 4 of Stranger Things was much darker than all of the other ones, in my opinion. I don't know. But we have to, I think what that's drawing people to is we're seeing all of these things happening. And there is that just feeling in us that this isn't it. There is more than the years we have here. And we can even, misplace the gospel in that, where we find our identity, we find our hope and our joy in saying, well, I'm going to live a long and healthy and prosperous life, and I'm going to be married. We can get tied up in our motivations and feel like we're only going to be happy if we have the spouse, and we have children, and we have all of these things. We're not promised that. We're not promised an affluent life. We're not even promised a long, healthy life. I don't know about you, but it seems like sickness and cancer and just devastating things, lives taken too short, are happening all too frequently. And how do we how do we justify that? How do we look at that? And there's so many people that look at that and they say, how could there be a God that allows this to happen? How could there be a God that allows a 3-year-old to have a brain tumor that's going to take their life? Or why would God allow an individual to live their whole life with an ailment or a disability, or just a life of loneliness? They could never find someone who they were to marry. How could God do that? How could he be so cruel? There's a lot of layers to that. There's a lot of layers. And I can't possibly, go through all of them. But again, it brings us to this point of, if that's all life is, life isn't worth much. But the good news is, life is worth so much more because of who God is, because of what Jesus has accomplished. And because of that, we as his people, our hope and motivation in this life is to share that good news, to remind people, to guard each other by saying, all of these things going on, it's like a vapor. Our hope is in eternity. Our hope is beyond what is going on here. And so as our friends and as our neighbors, as our fellow followers of Jesus are struggling with the realities of what is happening day in and day out, our responsibility as believers is to unite, is to come together, is to find out where they're struggling, not so that we can berate them and judge them and make them feel even worse about it, so that we can say, brother, sister, like, I get it. I understand it. I've been there too. And here's the hope that we have. Here is the gospel that we hold true. Here is what we have put our faith in. Remember what the gospel is. Because the realization of who God is and what he has done and what that means for us as those that have put our faith in Jesus gives us hope, gives us joy, gives us a motivation that supersedes any house, any car, any income, any health. Because at the end of the day, we realize all of those things end. All of them. They all end. They go away. But our hope, our trust, the reason why the resurrection, I talked about it in our episode that came out at Easter. The reason why that's so powerful is it gives us a look into what is coming. And if that's not our motivation and how we live, if the salvation that we cling to is not that we get to spend eternal life with God, our Creator, then every life ends in disappointment. Because if you put your hope in the material things, those can go away. You can have everything and then go broke. You can have nothing and then get rich. You can be healthy and then get sick. Life can change in an instant. It can change in a second. So what is your hope in? In church, believers, how are you ushering in? How are you guiding? Who are you pouring into? So here's some of the things that I'm struggling with right now. With my mission, with what I firmly believe that God has put me on, where do we plant? Where do we go? I firmly believe that loveLocal is something that is needed. And again, it's not locally. It is we love local to reach global. And we have had guests on this podcast from all across the country. And we're working on some international guests. We want to demonstrate that. And so where I'm struggling is where do I focus my time? Because, like I said, at this point, this is a side thing that I'm working on, that I'm trying to build out. I'm still running, visual media. And so how do we build this, and what does that look like? I'm waiting for God to bring people in through our Creative Partners program, where we can get people who have the same passions, they have the same desires to reach people with the gospel through written word, through music, through entertainment, film, storytelling, however we can capture it and put it out for people. I'm waiting for God to bring those people in. And so part of my struggle is the wait. Part of my struggle is, what is my responsibility in this? And so I'm weighing out the sovereignty of God versus my responsibility. Like, I know God is going to do what God is going to do, but I also know that I have I have the talents and I have the gifts that God has given me in order to do that. I'm struggling with placement. And what I mean by that is my mind is just geared in a way where I am on this path of what I think what I think God is calling me towards, and then something else pops up, and I'm like, but I was placed here, but that's also very appealing. So do I go there? Do I stay here? What is my placement? Where should I be? Should I be spending more time on other things, or what do I do in that? And so as I've been, just praying through it, as I've been trying to process and read as much as possible, having conversations with friends, it is something where is this not just physically, but is this what God has? Is it supposed to be run the way we're going? Is this more of a side thing that we're, so all of these questions I'm going through right now. And then at the same time, I'm battling with, I got to keep the lights on. I got to keep food on the table and a roof over my family's head. And that is getting harder and harder to do as the world just, as pricing and inflation keeps going out of control. And as the economy, just like I said, it's just grinding right now. How do we do it? And like I said, so I empathize with the struggle that people are going through, because we're all going through it at some level. We're all going through. We're all affected by what is going on right now. So where I come back to is, while I wait, while I am waiting to see what God is going to do, I need to root myself in Him, in the gospel. While I am trying to figure out if He's going to bring people in, if He's going to provide, if people are going to support loveLocal through, their time, through their just watching our shows, or they're going to financially help, or they're going to, want to be part of a project that we're putting together. The guests that have come on the show have been so gracious, and their stories have been awesome. And so are there ways that I can plug them into different shows and maybe build something out around that? I mean, I don't want loveLocal to be the Scott show. Like, I don't want that. So as I wait, how do I live today for Jesus? And I've really just tried to take everything back to as simple as possible. Keep it simple, stupid, is what we learned back in school. How do I live today for Jesus? Am I even being intentional in what I'm doing? Is everything I'm doing reactionary? And am I trying to remember to bring Jesus into things, or am I starting with Jesus in everything and then working towards all of the other things that I have to do? As I sit and I look at, just as people are gathered in church and as people are out, living life, and I worry that we are just becoming so consumed and so busy that life is just becoming one reaction after another. And no mission in life is reactionary. Jesus didn't say, hey, if you have time for it, share the gospel, love people. That's the premise of everything that we do, is sharing the gospel and loving people as we do it. So we do that through coming together. We do that through various things. There's the trellis and the vine analogy. The trellis is the programs and the activities that we place in our lives, and the vine is the people that intertwine. And you have to have a strong trellis to hold the vine. And vines are heavy and they create a lot of weight. And so you have to make sure that you have a strong trellis. You have to have good programs that are actually speaking into problems that people are having and issues that they're having, and answering the questions that they have about theology and life and parenting and relationships. All of that is needed. But you don't want to overbuild the trellis and neglect the vine, and you don't want to not have a trellis to actually nurture the vine. But the point is, we need to have both. We need to be plugged in to what we're doing and who we're living life with. And we need to be intentional. And maybe that means we need to let go of some other things. If your kids aren't in 18 different sporting activities, that's okay. If they're only in one, or they can only do one activity, or they can only go to one camp, or they can only do one thing, if you have to cancel plans with other people, that's okay. I want to get to our sponsor for today's episode. It is New Pillar Marketing. New Pillar Marketing is run by Chris Kansky. He's a very good friend of mine, and he helped work and put together loveLocalPA.com. So if you have website needs, I really encourage you to head over to newpillarmarketing.com and just look at the work that Chris has done. If you need to put together an online store, if you're beginning to sell some merchandise as a side business, and you really want to just build that out, you want to keep it simple, but it's something that you can manage, he can help train you, he can build the website, he can manage it for you if you want that to happen. So just head over to newpillarmarketing.com. You can fill out a form there, and you can get in contact with him. newpillarmarketing.com. So in the last couple of minutes here, I've talked about some of the things that are creeping in. Obviously the economy has a huge effect on us physically, from a financial standpoint, the cost of things, all of that is true. But that should not dictate our spiritual health. Our spiritual health should be regardless of what our circumstances are. And I get that's super difficult, but it's the truth. And what causes that to have friction is sin. You could easily say that if we're fully submitted and obedient to Jesus, we can get that loss of the job. We can get the higher cost. We can have that loved one that goes home to be with the Lord. We can have that diagnosis. We can have all of those things. And if we are fully and utterly obedient to Jesus, we can take that news and our faith is strong. When we're not in that position, when the gospel is not just completely saturated in our hearts, that's where bitterness can come in. That's where worry can come in. That's where anxiety can come in. That's where uneasiness can start building. That's where tension in relationships can come in. And that's the fully submissive is not completely possible in this life. Again, this is what we're looking forward to. We're looking forward to being completely and utterly submissive to Jesus in that perfect order, just like the Garden of Eden, but like 1,000 times better, infinitely better. So we need to begin having conversations with people. And what I would encourage you, don't go the Lone Ranger route where you say, I'm going to do this thing all by myself or with my spouse, and we're going to get these couple of families and we're going to just create our own little church. We're not going to call it a church, but we're going to just cement ourselves to each other, and that's what we're going to do. There is a lot of good in that. But do not isolate yourself from the church. Do not dismiss yourself from the gathering. And I understand that there's issues going on in churches. There's issues going on with preaching. There's issues everywhere. Be part of the solution. Leaving the church and doing your own thing is not what God intended the church to be. He did not intend for a bunch of isolated churches of people doing their own thing in their own way of gathering. And I understand that we have that. I get it. The more we look at the church as the corporate church, and yes, we're going to have differences in doctrine. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have the denomination. I'm not saying that. My big concern is that people have abandoned the gathering because of something that they didn't like. They're not plugging into a church that maybe caters a little bit more to their preferences. They've just completely left. They're following an online church. That's not church. You can't gather physically, digitally. And yes, a church gathering is a physical gathering of the church. Reading a devotional is not church. Listening to worship music is not gathering with the church. I can listen to sermons and watch worship services and anything from any number of different churches, but if I'm not physically gathered with a church, it's not biblical. You need to be an active member in a church. How else can people pour into you? How else can you be held accountable? We've shed so much accountability because we don't want to be told that we're living in sin. We want to coddle all of that to ourselves. We want to take our sin and say, well, I'm saved. Like past, present, future, all my sins, they are forgiven. So even if I'm living in sin, I'm saved. But Paul strongly argues against that. And he says, so does that mean that we just continue on sinning? No, by all means, no. So how can we be called out of our own blind spots if we're not in relation with people? And I understand that opens you up to a lot of risky conversations. And so that's why you need to really know, and you need to really trust who you're in life with. That also means that you need to be able to take what one person says who doesn't know you, who's trying to call you out on something, at a different pace than someone who does know you, who loves you, who is for you, who wants to see you grow in your relationship with Jesus. Someone who is only after your friendship because they like your company, but doesn't care if you're willfully sinning in an area of your life, they're not going to confront you over that because they don't want to lose your friendship, versus someone who does love you and they care for you and they want to see you repent of that sin. And they're saying your relationship with Jesus is more important than your relationship with me. That's what we're after. And I get it. It sounds ridiculous to people who don't know Jesus. But we need to start doing it. We need to start coming together. We need to, if you're not gathering with a local church, find one. Find one. Find a local church that you can gather with and be willing to have yourself held accountable. We can't just go through life and just say, well, I'm saved. That's counter gospel. So here's how I want to end. I have been greatly encouraged lately with the conversations that we've been having here on Mission and Likeness. Not just with people here in the community, but with people all across the country and those that are moving into other parts of the world to serve. It has been so encouraging. So if you know of someone who has a great testimony, who is on a mission in life that God has put them on, we'd love to talk to them. We'd love to have them on the show. And so you can go to, let me think how you could. You can go to our Facebook page, loveLocal PA on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram, loveLocal PA on Instagram, and get them in touch with us. We'd love to have that conversation with them. Next week, we have a conversation with Trista Dunsmore. And this was a fascinating conversation that I had with her. It's a connection. This was a connection through my wife, and she was just like, hey, you got to talk to Trista Dunsmore. So that conversation's coming up next week. We have other conversations that we're lining up, and we're getting ready to film. I was super bummed because last week, the Adams Road Ministry performed. Matt Wilder performed at our church. We were supposed to have a podcast recording with Micah Wilder and Joe Warren, but a lot of different things fell through, and they were actually unable to make the trip. Matt was able to come in, and he got in late, so we couldn't even record with him. So we want to continue putting out episodes of Mission and Likeness where we have people that are talking about what God is doing in their lives, so that we can be encouraged, that we can say God is moving in people's lives, but that doesn't mean that they don't have struggles anymore. They still have struggles. They still have worries. They still have things that they're going through. But God working in their lives is providing the motivation and the joy and the contentment, the satisfaction that they can work through all of those other obstacles as they serve on mission for God. So if you would love to see more content, if you'd love to see additional content being produced, consider becoming a local and getting a local membership. loveLocalPA.com/join. We'd really appreciate it. And thank you to those that have already signed up. Next week, again, Trista Dunsmore, and be on the lookout. We have new content, a new series coming out in July. We'll be talking more about that later, but until next week, this is Mission Likeness only on Love Local.